Yusko.
Hey, I'm really excited today. I tell you, I feel really fortunate to have my next guest. He's a producer, he's a manager, he's a legendary guitarist, and he happens to be the founding member of Twisted Sister. And I want to welcome to the Long Island Sound, JJ French. JJ, so good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I knew a little, obviously, I grew up around when you guys were playing all over the place, and you were the house band for Mad Hatter and Hammerheads and all these different venues all over Long Island. So it's pretty cool to reconnect with you and talk about your journey and where you've gone and how you've been. But I want to start from the beginning, if you don't mind. In reading your bio, you quit high school. Something dramatic happened that kind of pointed you towards activism. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, I come from a political family. So
Okay.
my mother was a political consultant for most of the Democratic New York City candidates in the
Okay.
60s. So this is a very active, progressive family.
Great.
And that's the atmosphere I grew up in. And then you merge that with the times I grew up in the 60s, civil rights, anti-war movement. And we were all part of it. And, the difference between that then and today is that at Woodstock, if you got up and you yelled, "The war sucks," you'd have 400,000 people screaming, "The war sucks." Today,
Right.
you don't have unity. You just don't. But you
Right.
did back. So what I did, as crazy as it was, as much as I was involved in high school rebellion and
Hmm.
underground newspapers and suing the Board of Education for throwing me out for handing out an underground newspaper, it wasn't that unique at the time.
Sure.
I mean, at the time it was important, but it sounds like, oh, you did all that crazy stuff. Well, a lot of people did that stuff,
Right.
So I was doing that stuff, and then I was a rock and roll fanatic. So I was going to the Fillmore East or seeing every rock and roll concert I could do. And then I was a drug addict and I was a drug dealer. So I was multitasking, essentially. I was doing everything. I was dealing, I was taking, I was involved in anti-war civil rights protests. This was a whole thing. This was a cultural thing that's not, unique to me.
Right. Sure.
Most of my friends in New York City were mostly, Jewish kids. I'd say the preponderance of percentage of background was
Okay.
either Hispanics, because I grew up on the Upper West Side,
Alrighty.
and Jews, and we were all friends. We
Right.
listened to the exact same music. We did
Right.
the exact same things. We did the exact same drugs. We ran after the exact same women. And so my first band was just all Puerto Rican guys,
Oh,
from my
cool.
neighborhood, because we all loved the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks and the
Right.
Who, and
Sure.
so it was Carlos Avalares and Manny Hernandez and the Echeverry brothers. I mean, it's just, when I think about it, you didn't think about it. It was the culture. So anyway, when the Kent State kids were killed at Kent State University on May 4th, 1970, I was 2 months from graduating my high school,
Oh boy.
and I had not been in class all year. I'd been
Okay.
demonstrating over a racist high school administration that we felt was not dealing with African American and Hispanic kids fairly.
Okay.
And I led a student organization march for those kids, among many kids in my high school. And the
Hmm.
high school, it was then the police moved in, and there was riots every day. So I didn't wind up going to school. I just went to school to deal drugs, get high, and to march for
Wow.
the whole year. For the whole year.
Right.
And in Easter 1970, I met and fell in love with a girl who was the great granddaughter of Robert E. Lee, the Confederate general, Robert E.
Wow.
Lee.
Okay.
And I met her in Bermuda the year before, and I kind of fell in love with her. I went down to Richmond, Virginia. When I went down to Richmond to live with her, the Kent State kids were killed, which then caused riots around the country. People don't know this, but the day
Right.
of the killing, every university went on strike.
Right.
Every university, just riots and craziness. And I came home back to New York City, and my mother said, I didn't tell her I was going to Richmond to meet this girl, and like, where were you? I said, hey,
Sure.
I said, that girl I met in Bermuda. Well, I think I think we're going to start going out. She goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, screw everything. I'm dropping out of school. What do you mean? You got 2 months to go. I said, no, I don't have 2 months to go. She goes, what do you mean? I said, I haven't been to school all year.
Oh
She
man.
goes, what? I said, I've been dealing, getting high, going to parties. And I haven't been in school all year. And screw the man. Fuck the man was. And then she said to me, well, what are you going to do? And this is not a joke. That sounds like a
Right.
cliche. I said to her, I'm going to be a rock and roll star just because I wanted to
Wow.
shut her up. I just wanted to shut her up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no idea. I had no idea what exactly that meant. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Who
shut her
does
up.
at 17 or 18, right?
So I just want to be a rock star. Don't worry about me.
Well,
And those words rang in my ear for the rest of my life because as the band was going through its multiple rejections, I
right.
kept
Right.
thinking about this conversation I had with my mother, where I said, I'm gonna be a rock star, and then when my mom died in 2 years into the Twisted Sisters existence,
Oh man.
she died. The band started in December '72. She died in December '74,
Okay.
and for the next 3 or 4 years, if we had a bad night, or in my mind a bad night, I would go walking down to the park and having this imaginary conversation with my mother,
Oh wow.
saying we sucked last night, and I'm going to figure out a way to do better. And coming from an atheist like me, that's rather interesting because
Yeah.
I'm not religious in any way, but I had this imaginary conversation with my mom, and so when people say to me, why did you keep going? You're really smart. I said, you're either really smart or you're really stupid.
Right. Right.
Because we never took no for an answer, and we kept pushing beyond the bounds of anybody's tolerance for pushing. I mean, you don't get, we were turned down more times in a bedsheet in a whorehouse, and we came back more times than Freddy Krueger. That's what I tell people.
Wow.
And
Wow.
people say, how do you do that? And I say, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You need people who will fight that fight with you, which is
Right.
why when I hired D, you could tell he was the kind of guy who would fight that fight shoulder to shoulder, day after day. And Mendoza, the bass player, and Eddie Ojeda, they would fight that fight because
Nice.
the repetition of the nights was astounding. And if you buy my book, I put all the dates in the back of the book that we
Oh
played.
great. Yep.
If you have to remember, the first 2 years of the band, we played 5 shows a night. And then
Really?
the next 2 years, we played 4 shows a night. The next 2 years, we played 3 shows. So we were at 6,000 performances before we ever got a record deal.
Wow. Wow.
And so when people said, how did you guys, you guys were always so tight and so professional, I say, if you've done something 6,000 times and you still suck at it, maybe you're in the wrong profession.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
we learned how to do it. And what this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing is tomorrow, this Long Island Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, is really a celebration of the best of the best of those bands, which was Stanton Anderson Band,
Yep.
because
Good rats.
they did the country rock stuff, and Zebra did the Zeppelin stuff, and Rat Race Choir did the progressive
Oh
Yes
right.
and
Right.
all
Yep.
stuff. And although no one's going to be there from Rat Race, unfortunately, no one can make it from Rat Race to this thing. And of course, the Good Rats were the original band. They played all originals, but the 5 of us reigned supreme. So there was the 5 of us, and then there was hundreds of other next tier bands
Right.
that couldn't sell out the big rooms because the big rooms were Hammerheads in Levittown, which was 3,000 people, Speaks in Island Park, which was 2,000 people. You
Wow.
want to
Wow.
headline those rooms, you have to have a big following.
Sure. Yep.
All of us were in the same boat in that we learned how to promote ourselves, record ourselves, did our own merchandising, because the record labels were saying no, 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 no. We were anathema, And if you think about it, at the same time that we were so grossly popular in Long Island, the CBGB scene was happening exactly at the same time
Right.
in Manhattan with Television and Blondie and Talking Heads and the Ramones. And those fans didn't care about us, and our fans didn't necessarily, care about them. It was a real
Sure.
cultural
Divide. Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I gotta ask you this, JJ. From the inception of Twisted Sister, when you all started out, and I'm going to give you an impression for what it's worth. From where you started out to where you became, dressed up in glam rock and stuff like that. Was it like that from the beginning? That's my first question. The next question is, I would think, and I thought about this with Kiss, and maybe they're criticized for it, when there's a lot of theatrics, is the theatrics covering up poor musicianship per se? I mean, that's the impulse thought. It's not what I believe in, but how did you address that? How did it go from where you started as Twisted Sister to the image and the brand that you created finally?
in the large scheme of things, was theatrics the reason why Jerry Lee Lewis set his piano on fire? Was theatrics the reason why Chuck Berry did duck walks? Was theatrics was the reason why Elvis did his dance? Was that theatrics? Of course, there's always theatrics involved.
Right.
There's uniforms. Was it
Yep.
theatrics the Beatles wore what they wore and shook their heads when they did? Woo! Of course
Right.
it was, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, was it theatrics when James Brown, blew everybody off the stage the way he danced and like nobody could touch James Brown?
And
Was
the
it
cape.
theatrics when Little Richard stood on his piano and pounded away at it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is the difference? I mean, truly, what is the difference? You're trying to call attention to yourself while
Sure.
you're playing rock and roll music, okay? So you could make that statement about all those artists, every single one of them.
Good point.
And if you don't like those artists, you'll come up with a reason not to like them. Oh,
Right.
Elvis just shakes his hips. Oh, Little Richard just bowed there. Oh, Jerry Lee Lewis set his piano on fire. That's because they all suck. It's like,
Right.
my father once said to me, that all music after 1945 sucked. Now, he made it really simple. He just drew a line. He goes, 1945 on, baby, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. That was my father's interpretation, right? He made it really clean. Country, rock, doesn't matter. Baby, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a classical music fanatic, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Loved classical music. Listen to QXR. You could play 2 seconds of a song. He'd go Schubert's Mass in F minor by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Yeah, that was great because he cared, right? He
Right.
cared.
Right.
Well, if you don't care, then you dismiss everything. I mean,
Agreed.
if you didn't know the Beatles necessarily, but someone played a Beatle record, a Searchers record, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, Freddie and the Dreamers, back to back to back to back to back, you'd say, same band.
I follow you. Yeah.
They all sound exactly the same. So genres follow musical styles. Showmanship follows musical styles. So if you're saying, did the glam thing, was it any more of an excuse? No, it was another expression of an era
Right.
and a
Right.
time.
Now, did you adopt that over time, or
No.
how did?
From the get-go. It was,
Oh, really? Okay.
we started out, I saw the Dolls in 72.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and thought they looked amazing, but they were not a good band. And had they not looked the way they looked, I don't think they would have raised an eyebrow.
Interesting point.
And when I get criticized, dolls this, dolls this, dolls this. Well, first of all, people hate the Beatles. I don't care. I love the Beatles. My favorite
Yeah,
band.
sure.
You tell me you think they suck, you know where I go? Okay, fine. My wife doesn't like them. She turns on the radio, she turns it off. That's fine. I don't care. I really
Right.
don't care. I don't sit there defending billionaires. I don't defend, like, I love the Grateful Dead. I hate the Grateful Dead. Well, either way, you can't win. You like the Grateful Dead? They suck. I hate the Grateful Dead. They're the best.
Right.
It's like, you can't win. So you either don't make a comment, you say nothing. You just say like, yeah, man, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I
good.
gotta say this. I picked this up in what I was reading about you, and when it comes to live performance, I think, and I'm paraphrasing here. You said, you're playing. It's like the last time you're going to play. I mean, you put your heart and soul into that. And I've talked to other guests of mine. Nancy Atlas is one of those who said, you know what, I have fun, but I take my craft very seriously, and I throw as much energy as if it were my last performance. And I think that absolutely makes a difference in, like you said, fighting the fight and going against the naysayers and keep on going.
Well, that's why I have very low tolerance for bands who suck live. And when I pay a lot of money to go see a band and they suck live, to me, they suck live. Maybe to somebody else, they think they're great, but
Right.
for me, I'm very disappointed. And if somebody asks me my opinion, I'll tell them. Now, with the problem being famous is that if you have an opinion that doesn't agree with people, you're an asshole. But what person doesn't go see a show? Any show, just a regular person goes to see a show, walks out and goes, man, that sucked.
Right. Right.
Or man, that was great. All right. But like, wow, they really sucked. Well, if no one's asking you your opinion and it's not being put in magazines and papers and being, then nobody cares. But
Sure.
when you then hear someone else go, they suck. Go, hey, what do you mean they suck? Who the hell do you think you are? It's like saying, you could say your mother's an idiot, but if someone says your mother's an idiot, you'll beat them up, right? But you can say your mother's an idiot. So when it comes to bands that I love that don't perform well, in my opinion, I've been vocal. I've said, man, they just blew it. They suck. And if you think that that's good, you have no idea what's good.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I am very, I am extremely opinionated,
Good,
but
good.
I have a right to be opinionated because not only did I play 9,000 performances with Twisted, I saw another 2,000 performances by everyone you could imagine, you could
Mm,
ever want to see. And I saw them when they were literally just barely known or
okay.
in a small venue, in clubs or in theaters. Oh, I saw Zeppelin at the Garden. Yeah, I saw them open for Iron Butterfly. I mean, don't talk to me about Led Zeppelin. I saw Zeppelin play in Central Park for $1.50. Like my wife gave me a shirt and the shirt said, "I'm so old I saw Zeppelin on stage." And I said to her, "I'm so old I saw the Grateful Dead as an opening band." Okay, I saw the Dead open. When the Dead opens, you know what they do? They tune up and say goodnight. I mean,
Mhm.
they play 45 minutes.
Right,
No one
right,
can imagine the Grateful Dead playing 45 minutes. You can't. There's no
right.
way you can imagine it. It's always 6 hours, man. It's always 6 hours. No, it's not. First of all, it was never 6 hours, asshole. I saw them 27 times. So don't tell me it's 6 hours. Number two, I saw them with Pigpen 27 times. When people start throwing their Grateful Dead credit me, I go, dude, not only did I see them with Pigpen 27 times, but Jerry Garcia gave me a tab of acid at the Fillmore. Does it get more official than that? I was sitting in the front row, took the acid out of my pocket, dropped it on the floor, told the usher I dropped the acid. He made everybody get up to look for the LSD that only could happen at the Fillmore East. Okay, that couldn't find it. The band walked out. The guy walked up to Jerry, said, "This guy just dropped it." Jerry gave him a tab, gave it to me. Great. Okay, so therefore, fuck you and all of your, like snobby dead fucking stories. If you're gonna tell me you saw them at 78 at somewhere, I go, fuck you. You never saw them when they were great. Here's
All
the
right. So
thing.
let me
They
ask.
were
I'm sorry.
great.
Did I
Well,
go
the,
ahead?
the point being is that when a band is great, if I get off on the band's performance, I'll say I got off on it. That was a well done performance. And if a band doesn't, I'm very confident in my criticisms of how they are.
All right. Having said that, is there one particular performance of another band that you said that was tops that blew me away like no other?
Good question. I was recently asked by an interviewer what was the best shows I saw.
Hmm.
And it just so happens that there's plenty of live albums by our favorite bands,
Right.
right? So I started going through my collection of live albums of concerts I attended.
Okay.
So Band of Gypsies, live album, I was there. Band Rock of Ages, Academy of Music, I was there.
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix, Phil Maurice, right, I was there. Rolling Stones at Madison Square Garden, get you, I was at, I was there. Elvis at Madison Square Garden, I was there. I mean, I have 17 live albums
Okay.
that I actually attended those concerts. So when you have those albums, you can actually go back and listen now
Yeah.
and
Sure.
find out how good it really was. Because maybe our perception was off, but who knows what drugs I was on.
Yeah.
I
Right.
was
Right.
high all the time. The Stones at the Garden, I always remember. I saw all three shows. Most people don't even remember. By the way, the Sirens, "Welcome to New York City."
Yeah.
I'm not in the
This,
witness protection program. This is
this is life. Yeah.
live in New York City. Um, the Stones at the Garden. They played three shows. Thanksgiving weekend, 1969. They played Thursday night, Thanksgiving Eve, Thanksgiving, and they played Friday a matinee show, a 2
Okay.
p.m.
Wow.
show, and an evening show. I was at all three. And it was one of the most chaotic, frenzied, and mind-blowingly revolutionary concerts I ever saw. Just in terms of my memory of the energy. Remember, the Stones had just come back after they did Beggar's Banquet.
Hmm.
And they did Let It Bleed. Let It Bleed had just come out.
Okay.
And Mick Taylor had joined the band,
All right.
which meant they had a great guitar player now for the first time. And they were, in my memory, absolutely mind blowing. And I listened back to the record just the other day to see what it was like. And, they weren't as tight as I envisioned them to be. But
Okay.
it didn't matter.
Right.
It didn't matter because whatever else was going on in the air, remember they opened with Street Fighting Man. This was when the cities were burning.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I mean, the cities were burning. I mean, this was Altamont happened 2 weeks later. Just to
Oh
keep
yeah.
perspective, in which the kid
Sure.
was killed, right? So we have
Yep.
to keep
Hell's Angels.
right. So that was like, whoa, So yeah, so that was fun. Elvis at the Garden. I remembered it sucked because he didn't care about his old music. He put it
Hmm.
off like in a 2-minute medley because he
Yeah.
wanted to do pop songs like, like Polk Salad Annie and stuff like that. He did a real Vegas show. I wanted him to do the Elvis comeback special Elvis. That's the Elvis I wanted. Well, I found a live album, Madison Square Garden, in a cutout bin a couple
Okay.
of years ago. I bought the album. I said, "Man, I was at the show." It's exactly how I remembered it. It's
Oh, that's
exactly
cool.
how it was. It was a real disappointment because he miscalculated. Do you know that it was the only time Elvis ever played New York City? Was that
Wow.
night. And it was a
Wow.
total miscalculation and a grave mistake. Hendrix Band of Gypsies, I remember it clearly. 10th row center watching Jimmy play. By the way, none of these shows is the greatest show I've ever seen. I will tell
Okay.
you the show I ever saw. But but Jimmy came out and I remember standing in the 10th row. I remember I wouldn't sit down. People were sitting down. I remember I stood up. I'm
Okay.
maybe 40 feet from him, like dead center. I'm
Right.
staring
Right.
at him going, John, you're watching the greatest guitar player you're ever going to see for the rest of your life. Just remember what you're watching. Because I saw him 6 months earlier, and he was awful at the
Oh,
Garden.
wow.
He walked out after 6 or 7 songs. He was on acid. He was
Uh,
in those days. The stage was in the middle of the Garden, and it went
sure.
around in a circle. And the PA system was the public address system above their head, so they couldn't
Right.
hear anything. And when the stage turned, and if you weren't in front of the wall of amps, you couldn't hear anything. So you had to walk around the Garden.
Oh,
If you,
wow.
so I would walk around the top tier to stay in front of the amplifier. People say, "I saw you walking with your hair above." Anyway, he was awful that night. He was terrible, and I went, "Man, what a drag." So it's
Right.
unusual to see a guy at the first time at the Garden, and then see him 6 months later in a small venue. That usually goes the other way around. You see him in a
Sure.
small venue, they go to the Garden. So he played the Fillmore, and Eddie Kramer, his producer,
Hmm.
is a personal friend who also produced our first demos. And
Oh, nice.
after I listened to Band of Gypsies, I called Eddie. I called him. We still talk all the time, and I said, "I need to get some understanding from you
Yeah.
about Jimmy's performance that night," because I remembered that the crowd did not react insanely. They were polite.
Hmm.
They were polite. They were not, but the applause was definitely ginned
Muted.
up on the record. But it
Okay.
wasn't that people heard Machine Gun and Power to Love, and they just were like, "Huh, what?" Like Jimmy was great, but they weren't. They were expecting Jimmy. Well, Jimmy played 4 shows
Okay.
on that New Year's Eve, New Year's Day set, and I was at the only show in which he did an encore with Purple Haze, Wind Cries Mary, Foxy Lady, and Wild Thing.
Mm.
Because my memory was he came out for an encore, walked over to his amps, hit the second Marshall amp, and just exploded and ended with Wild Thing, and the place went, crazy. So I said to Eddie, "Was I imagining things? Was I on acid?" He said, "No." Bill Graham, he just told me the story last week.
Oh,
Bill Graham
cool.
said to him the night after the first night, he said, "Listen, man, if you need something to, how do you put it, to jizz the audience up? So
Okay.
if you do some of your old stuff, that would be a good idea." So
Okay.
Bill Graham actually asked him to do that, and I saw the show in which he did that.
Nice.
So it was amazing. I saw Jimmy, incredible. But to your question about the greatest show, I would say um, the second greatest show was the Rolling Stones' 1972 Exile on Main Street at the Garden. That
Okay.
show has been filmed a week later in Dallas, and it's the movie Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. And if you
Okay.
want
Yep.
to see the Rolling Stones at their absolute peak, you go see that movie. That's the Rolling Stones. That
All right.
is the greatest rock band in the world, flat out. But the greatest performance ever, where I walked out and I went, for a night that I did not expect, that
Right.
was the most exhilarating night of rock and roll ever, was Leon Russell and Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
After they left the Cocker tour, he went out
Right.
solo with the whole band,
Yep.
minus Joe. They played the Fillmore, and I always liked Leon Russell, and I like Mad Dogs. I went to see it. I walked out of the Fillmore that night. I still get chills, and I have spoken to people about. I'd say, "Who is this? The best show you ever saw?" And anyone would go, "Oh, Leon Russell, without a doubt, was the best."
Wow.
And it was maybe the single greatest exhilarating example of the spirit of rock and roll that I ever witnessed. And I've seen everything. So,
That's
I saw
amazing.
Zeppelin open for Iron Butterfly. Now, they did the whole first album. I was front row. It was a
Right.
great night. That may be in the top 5. That
Wow.
may be in the top 5. I had no intention of seeing Zeppelin that night. I was doing a drug deal that day. And I was in front of the Fillmore with 5 pounds of weed in a shopping bag, waiting for some guy to pick it up. And it was freezing. It was January 28th, 1969. It was freezing cold. And someone said, "Hey, front row, Iron Butterfly, $5. It was a ticket." And I said, "Well, shit, I got 5 pounds of weed. How bad can Inagata Davida be? I'll just smoke my way through, 5 pounds of weed." So I go in, and the opening band was a gospel group called Porter's Popular Preachers, because Bill Graham always had weird Bill,
Okay. Right.
which, he was a jazz guy and he was totally cool. Great, great gospel group. They did If I Had a Hammer, and, Thin
All the
Zeppelin comes out,
classics.
and
Yeah.
man, it does the first album. And I'm just, huh? Like, what the fuck was that? Like, that was just unbelievable. And then they came back 6 months later. No,
Okay.
5 months later. They came back in end of May, 69, and did the whole second album.
Wow.
And I had front row for that. And then, by the way, I saw them 4 times that year. I saw them in Central Park.
Okay.
Later that summer, they played a concert. When you play the park, the tickets were $1.
Wow.
So none of these tickets were more than the most expensive ticket that year was $6 for the Rolling Stones at the Garden.
Yeah, amazing.
But the
Different
Fillmore was
times.
$3, $4, and $5, and the Central Park concerts were $1 and $1.50. And everyone that played the Fillmore played those venues. So you could see. So I saw Zepp that summer for $1, $1.50. I don't remember. And if I didn't, I was sitting outside. It doesn't matter because the fence wasn't that high, and everybody could hear the music anyway because you're in
Right.
the park. People
Sure.
used to complain on Central Park South. That's why they stopped the concerts.
Right.
Because
Right.
you had Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, blah, 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 playing on Central Park South. If you
Rattling windows. Yeah, I'm sure.
rattling windows of the rich and famous.
Hey, I want to bring this up because you bring up two good points, and I want to tie it into frontmen. But just first on the Mad Dogs and Englishmen, one of my favorite bands is Tedeschi Trucks, and they've kind of modeled themselves on that big group type of performance. And I saw them at the Beacon last year. I got to meet Susan Tedeschi, and it was just great. I was still pinching myself. What a great lady. But Charlie Watts said, Mick is probably the best frontman in the world. Looking at Twisted Sister, and you said you hired D, and he's really the face of Twisted Sister. That's well known. How did that come about? And did you audition multiple front people, or did you expect him to be the front guy? How did that go?
Well, D was the fourth lead singer of the band.
Oh, okay.
So the guy who started the band was a very dynamic, charismatic kid from New Jersey.
Okay.
But he was an alcoholic, and eventually destroyed him, unfortunately. But he couldn't really write originals. But he was actually gorgeous looking. He was like he looked like Jim Morrison. Like he was a chick magnet for everybody in the band. All the girls went to him. He distributed the women amongst the band members. No kidding.
Okay, I believe you.
No kidding. It was the summer of 1973 was the greatest summer of my life, and billions of girls showed up at the Hatter, and he just distributed them amongst the band members.
Interesting.
In a Charles Manson-esque way that I still marvel at, because I can't even begin to explain what it was like. But let's just say it was fun. That's all. And there were no diseases. You didn't die for having sex. Just had to worry about pregnancy and VD. That was it. A couple of pills, an abortion. I don't mean to take that.
No, I know, but that was the time. That was the time.
It was the time. Everyone had fun. Everyone had fun. No one sued anybody. Everybody had fun.
It was on the brink of the sexual revolution anyway. So yes, everyone was out there having fun.
Besides which, girls like guys that look like girls. I mean, let's be fair. The girls who came to see us liked us because we were dressed like girls, right? So there was that whole sexual tension thing, and it was great. So the second that he left, and we replaced him with like a Rod Stewart type of singer, and the band then changed its image for a brief time to a more soul R&B Faces kind of thing. Most people don't remember this. It was only 3 months.
Okay.
Period. And then he left. He had drug issues, and he left. And then I got sick of lead singer, so I took over. But I can't sing, which is why I sing Lou Reed songs.
Gotcha.
So I did that for about 9 months, and my agent says, your band's gonna just keep dying unless you get a guy who can sing Led Zeppelin, because Zeppelin was really coming up.
Right. Sure.
And D could sing Led Zeppelin, so that's we hired him on the basis of the fact that he sang Led Zeppelin perfectly. And by the way, to that point, to the fans listening right now to this, 40th anniversary of Under the Blade is is this year, and we're re-releasing a double vinyl album. The second of the two albums, one is the original Under the Blade. The second one, for the first time ever, is Twisted Sister playing cover material from back in the 70s.
Oh,
And we
cool.
do a Zepp medley on it, which will blow your mind. It
Nice.
is phenomenal, and Dee's voice was spectacular. So that's what the whole point was with
Great.
getting it.
So
We
let's
needed to expand the song vocabulary.
Gotcha. Let's do this. Let's just take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about branding. I mean, you guys sold, 20 million albums. How your journey went from a Long Island based arena band, club band, to where you progressed to become internationally known. So, hey, everybody, we'll take a quick break. We are with JJ French. His new book out is called Twisted Business. I'm getting that book because I'm really intrigued by the intro about that book. We'll talk about the book too, and we'll be right back.
Are you ready for the ultimate podcasting adventure? The Long Island Sound podcast offers you not one, but two ways to engage with our captivating content. Tune in to our audio podcast on your favorite platform and let your imagination paint vivid pictures of Long Island stories. Or if you're craving a visual feast, catch our video podcast on Spotify and on the Long Island Sound YouTube channel. Double the options, double the excitement.
Hey, everybody, we're back. It's Steve Yusko at the Long Island Sound podcast. And as I said in the intro, I feel really blessed to have JJ French, who is a producer, a manager, a phenom guitarist, and founding member of Twisted Sister. Good to have you, JJ. On the break, I wanted to talk about your journey going from, one of the five major bands on Long Island in the day to breaking through and getting known nationally and then even internationally. How did that progress for you?
Well, the five major bands on Long Island we all knew it was a trap because we were so successful and we were making so much money that you didn't want to lose that. And when you sign a record deal and you start all over again, it's kind of like going from a highly paid minor league baseball player to a low paying major league baseball player. So and that some bands couldn't deal with that. The Good Rats already had a record deal, but Zebra and us did, and Stanton and Rat Race didn't, for whatever reason. But
Right.
it involves a lot of hard work, a lot of luck. You write originals, you hope they work. In the bar days, there were no tribute bands. You just did cover material. They weren't called tribute bands. Nobody did a Zepp show. Nobody did a
Right.
show. Nobody did a Doors show. You didn't do that. It was just you played cover material or a genre material. So if you're a country band, you played Allman Brothers, all that stuff. And if you were
Sure.
a metal band, you played, the 10 metal bands. So, Dee was a good songwriter, and he kept writing songs because we all knew that we had to get out of here. I mean, we couldn't stay here. It wasn't going to last forever. And then the drinking age started going up, and we knew the clubs were going to start falling apart. But this is another large story. I've always been a business guy. So, when you're a business person, you can see things. You do macro and micro analysis all the day. You're thinking where you are today. Where you're going to be 10 years, 10 months, 10 weeks. And it was kind of like they asked Keith Richards, what's the difference between him and Mick Jagger? And I laughed at his response because this is really true. He said the difference in him and Mick Jagger is that Mick Jagger wakes up every morning and says, what am I doing today? What am I doing 10 weeks from now, 10 months from now, 10 years from now?
Okay.
Keith said, I get up and go, what am I doing? I got up today, So I was that guy.
Okay.
And Dee was that guy. And we always looked ahead. So while we conquered all this stuff here, it was we knew this wasn't going to last. And we had to get out. So you kind of, as time went on, as 80, 81, 82, and the drinking age went up, the clubs started closing because the drinking age was going up. We felt like we were on an iceberg and we needed to be plucked off it. And as is described in my book, Twisted Business, and in our documentary, We Are Twisted Fucking Sister, we go into depth as to the stories of how it happened. People say that was there luck involved? Yes, but what they say is luck is preparation meets opportunity. That's luck. So you take advantage of the opportunities because you're ready for it. Like, oh my God, you find yourself in a situation, but you know what? You've worked really hard for this. It's kind of like the baseball player that fills in for an injured superstar and he has the best day of his life and now he's in the majors, right? Because unfortunately that guy just broke his leg.
Right.
And that's in a nutshell. It's that confluence of circumstances. Again, there's so many of these events that occurred in the book, and so many, and we described in the documentary. I don't want to belabor waste time, but just say that we were able to adjust and adapt ourselves quickly because we had a vision that was bigger. We wanted something bigger. Doesn't mean we're guaranteed, but we wanted something bigger, and we were able to latch on to all these little opportunities that came up, and then we excelled at them.
Now, were you guys all in unison on that vision? Because
listen,
that doesn't happen in a band often. Usually it's like, hey, I got to get a real job because,
that was part of the vision. I said to the guys in the band at some point, how much do you all need to make as a salary so that we don't have to worry about someone thinking of another gig?
Sure.
So without telling you how much that was or what year that was, we all said, if we make this, we're good, right? Yes. So we had a guarantee you could always make that. So you never had a problem. So the cushion was always there. And then we made a lot of money, and we put all the money back into the business. This was what separated us too from a lot of the bands. We took all the money and put it back into production, PA, lights, demos, shopping them, because there always was a bigger vision down the road. So by the time the band was signed, like I said, I personally was at 6,000 performances. Now, I'll be clear, not nights, performances, multiple performances a night.
Sure.
So I was at about 6,000. So when I talk to young musicians today, and the comparison, it goes like this: 22-year-old kid comes up to me and says, "Hey man, give me some advice." And I go, I can give you advice, but it's not going to have any relation to where
you are.
How do you do it? And he said, why? I said, because when I started, gasoline was 29 cents a gallon. And a hotel room was $19 a night, and a house rental was $300 a week, and a truck rental was $25 a week, and the drinking age was 18. There was thousands of bars, and you made $150 a night, and you could actually create a business model and learn how to grow. I said, today gas is $5 a gallon, and a house rental is $3,000 a month, and a truck rental is $500 a week, and the drinking age is 21, and there are no clubs. There are basically no record labels.
Right.
And so what are we talking about here? And you're still making the same $150 a week, a night rather. So I don't know. Obviously, there's a different thing going on here. Obviously, the bands have to sell their own merch. They have to do tons of social media.
Do a lot of festivals,
It's a different pathway. And the only thing I will say in common is that any business that survives because they recognize what's around them and they figure out ways to adjust. Doesn't matter what business. It could be the music business. It could be the shoe business. It could be any business. How do you survive in business? You look around your competition and you say, I'm better than this, not as good as this, blah, 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 and you figure it out until, somehow you get the shot. Everyone starts imitating somebody else. Yeah. I mean, look, entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs for two reasons and two reasons only. One reason is you've thought of something the world has never seen, and you're willing to risk everything in your life to show it to the world. Or the other thing is you want to improve an existing model better than anyone's ever seen it. Well, rock bands improve on existing models. The Beatles were existing, they improved on existing models. The existing models were all the bands that preceded them. They wanted to be better than those bands. So I always say to entrepreneurs, look at your playing field. Look what's out there. That's common to any age, anytime, any era. Just look what's out there. You're a 22-year-old kid, you got a band now? Well, look who other 22-year-old kids are in bands. See if they're more popular than you. Why are they more popular than you? Is the materials better than you? Is it their social media is better than you? What is it about them that's more successful than you? Emulate that first, then figure it out after that. But that's how you do it. Because look, when a young kid says to me, hey man, we've been together 2 years, and I say, how many shows have you played? And they we played like 50, 60 shows in the last 2 years, which sounds like a lot. I said, 50, 60, 45-minute sets? Yeah. I said, over the last 2 years, right? Oh, yeah. That's like 24 months, right? You've done like 50, 60 shows. I said, well, Liz, I hate to say this to you, my friend, but in the first 30 months of Twisted Sister's existence, I played 3,425 shows. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And that's the new game. Doesn't mean that you can't be successful today. You can. Different rules apply. Also, if a 20-year-old kid's asking me for advice, and I'm 70.
Okay.
I'm thrilled to give him advice. But when I was 20, I didn't ask a 70-year-old musician for advice. First of all, that guy would have said to me, he would have said to me, I was born in 1902.
Yeah, there were no records.
And my first band was was playing at a ballroom behind a female singer, probably before
Yeah.
World War One. I mean, that's the way you would have said to me.
Good
And I'm
analogy.
going, well, that has nothing to do with me wearing women's clothing, playing through Marshall amplifiers in a bar owned by a mob guy. I mean, that's got no relation to your life. So,
Well, the mob guy might have a relation to back in the day owning the club. That's about it.
Maybe that's the only thing you have in common is that this old mob guy.
Hey,
But you know that's really it. You just have to work hard. You got to figure out the pathway to success.
now I was in doing my research on you guys. I rewatched We Ain't Gonna Take It, that video, right?
Right.
Now it's I think that played millions of times on when MTV was pretty new, right? If I recall. But what I picked up on, which I thought was cool, I remember Animal House was huge, and you guys got the actor that was in Animal House to kind of replay his quasi role as an asshole father in that, which I thought was genius. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that, but I think the confluence of MTV and branding, man, speak to me about branding because I noticed that as well.
So for all of the times things didn't work out,
Yeah.
things finally worked out, and you just have to be around long enough to work them out. But when we had the opportunity to do that, prior to the recording of Stay Hungry, we had done Can't Stop Rock and Roll, and we had toured the United States and the world on that record. And the record label didn't believe in the band, so they didn't give us much support.
Wow.
But we knew what we could do, but we were never unleashed on the world. We'd only been in the tri-state area, so we rented our own trucks and cars and did unbelievable touring night after night, U.S. and Canada and Europe. And at the end of the year, we sold 100,000 records without any tour supports. And the record label Atlantic, who had said basically you suck, and the president of Atlantic saying to people that we suck, and if anyone mentions their name, they'll be fired. I mean, it couldn't get any worse than that. You know, your record label president telling you if you mention the name again. In fact, my podcast, the JJ French Connection, this month's podcast, and all my podcasts are up, so I've got 100 of them up there. But this month is Record Company President Month, and the first record company president I have was my A&R guy, Jason Flom.
Wow.
He was 19 years old, and he tried to sign the band and was threatened with being fired by mentioning the name Twisted Sister. He was threatened, if you mention the words Twisted Sister again, you will be fired. So I don't think rejection comes any clearer than that. Okay. Anyway, the point was we proved our point. And the idiot who told that to Jason, his name was Doug Morris, who used to be the president of Atlantic. And a year later, I met him for the first time, and he took me in his office, and he basically apologized to me.
It's nice.
Said, he goes, I didn't get it. He goes, apparently everybody else got it. He's reading me telexes because there was no faxes back then. He was getting telexes from all these other promotion guys on the country. Twisted played in Salt Lake City, blew it apart. How come we got no advance notice? Twisted played, blew it apart, played LA, blah, blah. He gets it from the chairman of Warner Music in Canada, Roger Desjardins. He goes, Doug, Twisted just played the Maple Leaf Gardens or something with Dio. Right. So I never saw anything like it in my life. How come you guys aren't supporting this? So he looked at me and he goes, this is what he said to me. Remember, this is 1983.
Okay.
He says, you know this thing called MTV, right? And I go, yeah. He says, you know who owns MTV? I said, no. He said, we do. I said, what do you mean? He said, American Express and Warner Music owned MTV in 1983. Most people did not know that.
Okay.
He said, you give me the right video and the right song and I'll make you the biggest band in the world. Those were his words.
Oh my God.
Now I will tell you, I walked out of his office not believing it because I was cynical. And I had dinner with my brother that night, and I told him the story, and he goes, that's great news. You've been killing yourself for 10 years. I said, the guy's full of shit. He's just hustling.
He's blowing smoke up my skirt.
Fucking hustler. This guy's full of shit. But you know what? He wasn't. Hired Tom Werman. We made the right record at the right time, and the rest is history. Now we look back 40 years, because May 10th next year will be 40th anniversary of the release of the album Stay Hungry, which has now sold 8 million copies worldwide.
Wow.
We're at 25 million total at this point, but 8 million copies worldwide. And We're Not Going to Take It and I Want to Rock are the most licensed songs in the history of heavy metal. More than AC/DC, Kiss, Guns N' Roses, more than any of those bands. We're in more TV shows, movies, soundtracks, commercials than any other band. Now, if you said to me 40 years ago, where do you see yourself in 40 years? Well, if you go to 1973 when Kiss started, Priest started, Aerosmith started.
Right.
If you asked any of AC/DC started and us, you ask any of us 50 years ago how long we were going to last, we would have said 5 years, maybe 10. Here we are 50 years later. Now, I will not argue the fact that AC/DC sold way more records than us. I will not argue the fact that Kiss has sold more records than us. I certainly won't argue the fact that Judas Priest or Aerosmith have sold more records than us. Okay? I will not argue that fact. However, you ask a 10-year-old kid to sing an AC/DC song, he will not know it. A
Yeah.
Kiss song will not know it. A Priest song will not know it. You ask him to sing We're Not Going to Take It, and the kid will sing We're Not Going to Take It. And we have worked really hard in making sure that that is the case. Now, this goes to your point of branding and marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. The name Twisted Sister is so unique and so special, and I knew that going many, many years ago. I knew it, and over the years, so many people have attempted to use it. I've sued many people
Wow.
for infringement on
protecting your brand.
Yeah, like all the time. You sue them. I won't get into how many lawsuits, but a lot of them. You sue them, violation of trademark.
Yep.
But if you told me 40 years ago that our songs would be licensed, I would say, what is it, marriage license? I wouldn't know what that is. So to the point of knowing how to evolve and understanding your business model, the idea of marketing songs for movies, that occurred to me.
Mm-hmm.
In 1990, I was in between my first and second marriage, and I was visiting my future in-laws in England.
Okay.
I was watching a TV commercial in England for Tide detergent or Mars bars or something.
Right.
And they used the song Benny King's Stand By Me in the commercial, which had nothing to do with the product. They just decided to use the song.
Yeah.
And England being weird, the song was released as a single again and went to number one 30 years after it was number one. Right.
Wow.
And I sat there going, music and commercials. That's a new thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. So because Twisted ended in '88 really badly, and me and Dee filed for bankruptcy, which is in my book.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I had to go to bankruptcy court, and I had to defend the band. I had to defend owning the bankruptcy court judge wanted to take the name from me. He wanted to take the name from me. And I said, it's a worthless name. And he said, what do you mean it's worthless? I said, well, you know the name because it's famous. I said, but nothing is as old as yesterday's news. And we're yesterday's news. Our last tour bombed and the record bombed and we're just done. And it's useless to anybody. He goes, well, how does that happen? I said, I said to the judge, movies that cost $100 million bomb at the box office. Nobody knows why, but they just did. Even with all the hype, and Broadway shows with $30 million worth of advance sales bomb. I said, shit happens. Yeah. I said to him, maybe 10 years from now, some maybe Tide detergent will license one of our songs, and if that happens, maybe I can put the band back together. And if that happens, maybe I'll remarry. And if that happens, maybe I'll have a kid. And if that happens, maybe I'll want to send my kid to college. So maybe I can put the band back together. This is this fantasy story I tell in court. And the judge looks at me and goes, "Wow, that's pretty compelling. Okay, I'll let you keep the name." Now the truth is, 10 years to the month of that statement, Comtrex nasal spray license. We're not going to take it for the first time. That was our first commercial. Wow. And we've
nasal spray, a nasal spray.
Comtrex nasal spray. It goes, feeling sick? We're not going to take it. It was a Comtrex nasal spray commercial. You can see it online. You can see it online. Just put Comtrex Twisted Sister. We're not going to take it. That was our first commercial.
Well, plays it. And So what do you do?
So this is a little complicated. This is going to get in the weeds, but I'll explain this to sure you understand. Okay.
Yeah, please.
There's a thing called public performance rights.
Okay. Yep.
BMI, ASCAP, CCAP. You know these companies.
Sure.
Okay. They made it. Okay. Music publishers back in the 30s and 40s went to Washington, D.C. and said, hey, listen, we're making these things called records, playing on the radio, and we don't believe we should pay the artist any money.
Wow.
We don't think you should pay the artist any money. You should pay the publishers, the writers. They're the only ones making money. The artists can go out and tour, sell records. They don't need the money. So the United States government said, okay. So the public performance royalties laws state that when a song is played on the radio, terrestrial radio, like WABC, whatever, whatever stations are listening, or the songs at a stadium, anyone that pays licensing fees to BMI, ASCAP, CCAP, the artist makes zero. The writer makes and the publisher makes money. So New York Times did a story a couple of years ago to inflame the ignorant public, which said Aretha Franklin's Respect has been played 7 million times. Aretha's made zero. Okay, now the writer of the song was Otis Redding. He made a fortune with his publishing company. Now, this inequity extends to public performances in, let's say, arenas. Let's say a politician gets up. Politicians in an arena, Trump, doesn't matter who,
Right.
politician. If that arena pays ASCAP and BMI fees, you can play any song you want,
Okay.
never ask permission, and never pay anybody. You got that? Because
All
they
right,
pay
I'm
a
with you.
blanket license. So let's say the politician wants to play We Will Rock You by Queen.
Okay.
Okay. Queen hates this politician.
Sure.
And they go, we're going to sue you. The truth is, you can't. The truth is, you have no recourse. The truth is, you don't want to appear weak and lame to your following. So you make a big statement. We're going to sue you. You can't.
Right.
Everybody knows you can't, but you don't want to admit that you can't. So
But-
you say, I'm going to sue you. Fleetwood Mac, you can't use that song. We're going to sue you. You can't. All right. The bottom line is you can't, because by law, if that venue is paying licensing fees, they can do whatever the hell they want. And the artist anyway gets paid zero. But the public perceives, if a song is played, that you must be endorsing the artist. So now it looks bad for the artist. So
Right.
what does the artist do? Besides making this bullshit statement saying we're going to sue you, which they really can't.
Right.
You know, and if anyone responds to this, say, yes, you can. No, you can't. Sorry, it doesn't
Okay.
work that way. You can't. But what you do is you humiliate the politician, and you hope the politician doesn't want the bad publicity.
Right.
So you
right.
take out this thing, I hate you, blah, blah, blah. And the politician, you know, basically says to his lawyer, can we be sued? No, you can't be sued.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't worth it. Yeah.
It wasn't worth it. So you stop using the song. So a misconception one, that the artist has any say in the use of these songs by anybody in any of these venues. No. Misconception two, the artist doesn't get paid a penny anyway, under any circumstances. Just the writer gets paid. So you got that. You got no choice. You don't get paid. That's the truth. Most people don't know it. It's complicated. Now, what's the flip side of that is when
Right.
internet radio came out and satellite radio came out, Sirius XM and all that stuff and streaming, the
Mhm.
government then approached by the record labels and the artists said, whoa, 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 it's our time to make money. Screw
Yeah.
the writer. So that play pays the artist and pays the record label, and the writer gets zero.
Interesting.
And that's the flip side. And that organization is called Sound Exchange. And they're a government nonprofit set up to collect money for digital performance playing in every format you can imagine. And the artist gets paid and the record label gets paid. So that's the flip side of that. So
Yeah.
there you go.
You know
There's your
where I
limit.
learned company.
Yeah,
too.
he wants to be
you know,
the
you
label.
don't want to just be the artist.
No, you want to get both sides of that dollar.
Right.
You want to get 50 and 50. So that's what you want. So that's what he did. Now, most artists are signed to record labels. So you have to split. That money gets split. They send the label their money and the artist gets their money.
Right.
But that's
right.
how that works. It happened because I'm a natural business guy.
Well, you're an
And
entrepreneur
so,
from
you
years
know,
ago.
Yeah, and so that's why that happened. But most artists can't do business and won't do business. In fact, I've often asked, who else does this besides me? Well,
Right.
Mick Fleetwood managed himself,
Okay.
and Fleetwood Mac. And although if you read his wife Jenny Boyd's book, he
Mhm.
did so much coke that I don't even know. I even asked her when I did a podcast with her, I said, how did Mick do business? He was that fucked up. I mean, she wrote about the coke. Obviously, everyone
Right.
had permission to talk about the drugs. I'm not saying anything here that
Yeah. Right. Out of school.
it's a
Yeah.
secret. It's totally out there. And she said that he realized his coke use was making it impossible for him to do the business. So he hired people to kind of like help him do the business, but he was still the manager.
Right.
The point is whether he was doing blow, not doing blow. He's a smart guy. He probably figured out, how the business works. Most are Dave Clark from Dave Clark 5 is a businessman.
Sure. Yeah. Jimmy Buffett too. Jimmy Buffett.
ran companies. Jimmy Buffett. Steve Miller is his own manager. But the
Nice.
point is, you can count him on two hands. That's the point. The art of managing is so different from the art of performing, and usually they're mutually exclusive. Usually, it's very hard to wrap your head around the business side of it. Let's put it this way: I've negotiated millions of contracts. I've seen everything you can imagine, every clause. I speak to lawyers all the time. I try to stay on top of what's changing because that's what I like to do.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean my guitar playing suffered from it? Yeah, probably. because I made a decision I'm going to concentrate on the business side and less on the performance side. So my guitar playing reached a certain level of proficiency and then kind of stopped. When people ask me, how do I view myself as a guitarist? To be fair, honest to myself, I say, you know what, guys and professional baseball players who hit 250 have long careers. They'll probably never get in the Hall of Fame, but you know what? They're consistent. They show up, they do their bit, they go home. They're total pros. They last 20 years. That's me.
Right.
I'm a 250 hitter, which
Gotcha.
means I know enough to be a rock star. But when it came to the Van Halen, Yngwie crazy, it didn't resonate with me. And at that point, I was so deep in the management side that
Hmm.
I was considered leaving the band and just managing the band at one point.
Wow.
So, but when we're playing these big shows, when Twisted retired towards the end, the last 10 years the last 15 years, we were playing nothing but festivals.
Right.
100,000 people. I mean, regularly anywhere from 40 to 100,000 people. And we just did it because we know how to do it. We're one of the few bands that knows how to do it. We're one of the
Okay.
few bands promoter trusts with 100,000 people. That's very few bands are trusted with
Right.
100,000 people headlining a festival because you can't afford to suck. You
Right.
can't to be great. Otherwise the festival goes down in flames.
Yep.
And people say to me, man, what's it like in front of, all those people? I'll explain this to you. When the intro tape starts on any given night,
Hmm.
and your adrenaline starts pumping because for the next 2 hours you have to do a show. As a manager, I'm walking out on stage and I'm looking at things that you can't
Right.
possibly think of. I'm looking at the lighting trusses. I'm looking to make sure no one's near the flash pots that they can get blown up. I'm
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
to make sure that the monitors are working so the singer can hear himself. I'm looking to make sure the tuning is right. I'm doing a checks and balances routine for the first 10 minutes. I'm not comfortable for the first 10 minutes. I'll stand there, run around like I'll stand there, but I'm just doing a checklist. And
Yep.
then usually after the second song, when I'm convinced that it's going to go well, I'll immerse myself into the performance. But the performance has been done so many times. We play the same 17 songs all the time because you're playing in different venues. So if you're a
Right.
professional, you put on the show, the best show you can. You don't have to worry about repeating a line to someone because they haven't seen you the night before, right? But the professionalism of repetition, the joke is that we're the heavy metal version of Cats, except we're Jewish, so it's Katz. I mean, that's we just know how to do it. Like we know how to turn an audience on. I talk about frontmen and Charlie Watts saying that Jagger was a great frontman. Recently, that was a thing online. Who's the best frontman? It was
Yeah.
debatable. That's a very interesting question because I'm not sure I know what the definition of frontman is. Is the
Right.
definition of frontman a good singer? Is the definition of frontman a good dancer? Is the definition of frontman a good entertainer? Is he a raconteur? What is a frontman?
Right.
Springsteen can be. People will say his raconteur abilities are fantastic, and that makes him a great frontman. Jagger has no raconteur, none. He doesn't talk. So I
Right.
mean, I go see Jagger, and he's running around stage, and I think he sings great, and he's got all this energy, but he doesn't say anything. Oh,
Right.
what? No. How you doing tonight? I hope my trousers don't fall. I mean, there's no fucking. I mean, he's not talking to the audience. He's not being funny. He's not
Yeah,
being
but what
topical.
do you and making
Well,
it special for me in
fine.
whatever way he approaches it, which
And
is
I don't consider that
amazing.
and I consider that a great performer, but I don't consider that a great frontman. How's that in differentiation, right?
Good point.
I think
Good
he's a
point.
great performer. Take nothing away from him. Phenomenal songwriter, great performer. Gives me nothing as an entertainer. Like he's a performer, but he's not an entertainer. David Lee
I
Roth
agree.
is an entertainer, very entertaining. Now someone will say, "Well, he's not that great," and I said, "Okay, that may be the case. I'm only saying purely as an entertainment factor." A lot of people think Freddie Mercury was the best of everything. He
Hmm.
was the best storyteller, the best raconteur, best singer. I'm not going to argue with that. I saw Queen many times. Freddie
Hmm.
Mercury is one of a kind. He is spectacular. He could be, but I think Dee Snider is maybe the
Yeah.
best I've ever seen. And
Okay.
I've been on stage more times with Dee than Charlie Watts was on stage with Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've watched Dee evolve
Sure.
and be the funniest. His vocals are great. He's a
Right.
total pro. He does his 2-hour warm-ups every day in this, in the dressing room.
Wow.
He takes it very seriously, gives everything he's got for those 2 hours, kills himself on stage. No one works harder. No one's funnier. No one talks better. He has it all. And I see him with 100,000 people like eating out of his hand. So if
Nice.
you're asking me, then you see Ozzy. What does he do? I mean, the first time I saw Ozzy, he hopped on stage like a frog at Nassau Coliseum. And I thought, is that a roadie or is that the lead singer Sabbath? I was expecting, Dr. Doom, and this goofy guy comes out on stage hopping.
Crazy.
I couldn't, and I saw Van Halen open for them. Van Halen was ridiculous. That was 78.
Yeah.
They were insane. People talk about that show, about how great Van Halen was on that tour. Ozzy is Ozzy. So if you love Ozzy, what are you going to say? Anything about Ozzy? I mean,
Right.
if you love Ozzy, you love Ozzy. He does his thing, but as great entertainer / performer / frontman, it's a small list, of which I guess Springsteen fills someone's definition. Dee fills someone's definition. Freddie Mercury fills someone's definition. Rod Stewart probably fills somebody else's definition of it. Okay. First of all, if Blabbermouth gets a hold of this, they're going to go, Ozzy said, what about Ozzy? What inflammatory stuff?
That's all right. It'll go, the views will go through the roof. That's good.
Ozzy is really good for Black Sabbath. He's very good for Black Sabbath. He's the right voice. He's the right singer. He's right for Sabbath. Is he, in my eyes, a great entertainer? That's debatable. But
men's. Yeah.
Okay, guys, at Blabbermouth, you get that. But of course, you won't put that in there because that doesn't help with all your bullshit. All right. Anyway, now to your question about preparation.
Yeah.
Preparation for what specifically? My motivational speaking gig?
Because
I was introduced to the speaking world by Steve Farber, my co-writer, who's a professional and best-selling author and speaker. I saw him give a speaking. I saw him at a social media event he was a hired speaker, and asked him a question, and we went out to lunch, and he heard my story, and he said, "You should be a speaker." And so he groomed me, like he taught me the rules. This is like the same rules. Everything has a format, all kinds of things, and motivational speaking gigs have formatted. Like there's a certain beginning, middle, and an end, and
sure,
you have to have a book. And he said you have to have a book, which is why I wrote the book, because everyone says where's your book? So you have to have a book. So that's why I wrote a book. But the hook, there had to be a hook for the book. And I didn't have, I'm walking around, because I always walk every day, and I'm walking, I said, wait a minute. Take the word twisted, TWISTED, make every letter a teaching lesson that applies to what you thought responsible for the band being successful, and write a book around the teaching lesson. So if you take the letters TWISTED as it's outlined in the book, tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, and discipline, those were the rules I applied. And I give examples as to how that works to become successful. And those rules apply to every business. It doesn't matter if it's a rock band or a shoe company or anything.
Sure.
It's tenacity. Without tenacity, you got nothing. Without wisdom, you got nothing. Without inspiration, inspiration is what fuels you when you have no money. Stability is being able to put a company together that can withstand the challenges and the traumas, and survive through them while you're trying to get to it. Trusting the people involved with you is really important. Excellence and discipline. I mean, it speaks for itself. We were a disciplined band, and we strove for excellence, and we did it every day, and we did it all the time. And so all those rules apply to every single business that is successful. You can't find a single one. I've had straight corporate guys tell me, you wrote the best business book I ever read. That's exactly what it is. He says, you laid it all out there, except that we didn't know that a rock band thought that. We just thought you guys were sex, drugs, rock and roll, and fairy dust. You made a deal with the devil and you became famous.
Yeah, and you got dumb luck, and all of a sudden,
I wish it was that way, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
All the lessons in the book.
Hold the book up for me, will you, so our audience could make sure they guess.
Yeah. So Einstein has a quote somewhere I read, which is experience trumps education, trumps knowledge every time. So if you go through hell, you live through it. there are all these statements, these cliches. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back
Yeah.
up, and you can't stand the heat of the kitchen. And I get that. I managed an artist once his name was Andrew Fortier. He's a Long Island guy. He's a great guy. And Andrew wrote a song called "I Say Grace," Andy was the most optimistic human being I ever met in my life.
Okay. Right.
And he wrote a line in the song, and the line went, "When the roof caves in, it lets the sunshine in." And I went, "Oh my God, what a statement!" It's so succinct. But when all hell is breaking loose and everything's falling apart, who's calm enough to kind of deal with the traumas? And if you think about any business, you've got like challenges, crises, and catastrophes. It's like being in a plane. You got turbulence. It just depends on how bad the turbulence is.
Right.
And
Sure.
that's how companies work. You strive for stability, but what used to be a catastrophe ultimately after many years is chaos, and what used to be chaos is now just a challenge. So if you live through it all, then you become kind of bulletproof in handling all of these nightmare scenarios, which will kill most people.
Right.
But after you've survived them, and I kept diaries for 15 years, and the beauty of the diaries were when I survived bad times, I could read back about how I survived those bad times and went, wow, I didn't think I was going to get through those times.
Talk about New
I
Hampshire.
did,
I
but
believe.
let me be clear. The
Yeah,
person that did all that happened 50 years ago, like over 50 years ago. So I haven't been high in 50 years. So I talk about it as another person. When I stopped everything before the band ever started.
Oh, cool.
So I was never high on stage in my life. And
Nice.
being in a band with the guys who were drinking, the first version of the band, I watched the band fall apart because of alcoholism. So I had already gone through the drug period of the hippies in the 60s in New York City. Then I go through the alcoholism of the bar scene. And as we fired each member for being an alcoholic, we were hiring people who didn't drink. So Dee's first thing was, I said, "You don't drink, do you?" He goes, "No, I hate alcohol." I said, "You're my guy."
Oh man, nice.
And then we hired Mendoza on bass. "Do you drink?" "Oh, fuck, I hate drugs." I went, "You're my guy." So
Nice.
that runs completely counter to what you think is the archetype of a musician.
Yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just, there's no sex, no drugs, just rock and roll. I should say lots of sex, no drugs, just rock and roll. And that's, although at our age now it's sex, prescription drugs, and rock and roll, but that's another
It's
story.
just a different type of drug.
Different type of drug. But no. So I talk about that guy, that John Segal guy,
Okay.
in a third person because that was years ago. Like I did 5 years of solid drug taking, which ended in a near-death heroin overdose, and
Oh wow,
that
sorry.
was the end. Like it was that was the tipping point. Either you're stopping or you're going to die. And most of my friends who were part of that world that we were in, incredible amount of drug use, astonishing drug use, every day fucked up on acid and mescaline and SDP and DMT and angel dust and 20 joints a day and hash constantly and going and traveling and dealing drugs in Europe, which I did, and smuggling drugs and getting away with it and never having been arrested and never went to a hospital and never, I got away with it. The morning that I decided that was it, I said, "Man, John, you're a lucky motherfucker. You went through shit and you got away with it. Now's the time to stop." And I became extremely anti everything at that point. This was not based upon a religious epiphany. Jesus saved me, nothing. It was just like, well, I just said, holy shit, I'm going to die.
Yeah, and my luck's going to run out.
Like that, my luck's going to run out. One way or the other, I'm going to jail, or I'm going to get killed, or I'm going to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or I'm going to OD. And you have to make a decision. So most of my friends who have lived and become very successful people my age, I don't need to name names, very successful people who I grew up with, we all had the same kind of experience individually.
Yep.
Where we came to the line where this was it, dude. Make your choice now.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for me. That was a particular day, which was Easter Sunday, 1972. I describe it in the book, what happened on that day, and I never looked back. So look, I decided to be honest about it. The reason why I decided to be honest about it was my daughter. I said one day someone's going to tell her all this stuff, right? And I'd rather hear.
I might as well tell it. Yeah.
So she was 15. I sat her down. I said, "I'm going to tell you my entire life story, including all the drugs, everything I did." I said, "I'm going to tell you every bit of it, even though I know parents who won't talk to their kids about it." I said, "I'm going to tell you everything I did. Number one, you're going to hear it from someone else. So you may as well hear it from me. And number two, I'm not going to be with you when you're at your stupid parties with your friends getting fucked up. And if I can just be a voice on your shoulder and go, oh, yeah, Dad told me this could happen, it's the best I can do.
Yep.
So, I've never regretted it, ever. And she's never regretted hearing it.
That's
And I never have to worry about anybody telling her anything because it's all out there. And I put it in the book. It's all out there, like it's done. But let me explain this to you. I've also had two heart operations for atrial fibrillation.
wow.
I've had prostate cancer, and
Me too.
my daughter has uveitis, which is a leading cause of blindness among young girls in America, which we've been dealing with. So I raise money for the Uveitis Foundation. I do counseling for prostate cancer research. I'm a spokesman for Zero Prostate Cancer this year because, after all, what is our life worth at this point if not to somehow help people get through these times?
Yeah.
So that's my motivation, to just be as much of a conduit as I can for news and information and clearing shit up so that I can help people.
That's great. I tell you, I'm so happy that we've had this conversation. I had prostate cancer a year ago. Had it taken out and struggled through that a little bit, but I'm cancer free. Just went to the doctor yesterday. And I tell you, immediately after that, I felt like I'm telling everybody, hey, get the blood test, get the PSA. You're an idiot if you don't. And
You want to hear something crazy?
yeah,
A friend of mine had a Gleason 9 with a PSA of 1.3. 1.3. In other words, he would not have gone to a doctor to have a blood test at a PSA of 1.3. So how did they find it? They found it because he had diverticulitis, and every year has to go in for a scan as a follow-up for his diverticulitis. And in the last scan, they noticed a shadow on his prostate, and they did a biopsy, and he was Gleason 9 on the biopsy, and it was, you had to have it removed. So PSA doesn't necessarily tell you that you have prostate cancer, but as you know, because you had a biopsy, you had a prostate cancer biopsy. I had 5 prostate cancer biopsies before they found my prostate cancer. My father died of it. My brother had it. My father died at 73 undiagnosed, probably started when he was around 66. My brother got it at 66, and I got it at 66, which meant to me that all the tofu in the fucking world wasn't going to change that diagnosis. That was in me. It was going to happen. Then, of course, the questions come in. How are you going to deal with it? And yes, there's many questions about that, and I understand it all. But I think if you're listening and you're a male, number one, you get checked. Number two, if you do have it, you have to understand this one overarching statement, which is, do you want to live or do you want to die? If you want to live, you take care of it and you deal with all the other bullshit afterwards. But if the idea is you want to live first, you make the decision to take care of your prostate cancer. Because otherwise, if you don't, when it finally hits you, the last 2 years of your life will be the worst pain you have ever experienced. Your bones will rot. It'll just be horrible when it gets anywhere. So, and it's treatable. Bottom line is it's treatable. And the earlier the treatment and the younger you are, the better off you are in terms of what the post-prostatectomy or post-radiation. So you had a prostatectomy, you had an RPT, right?
I had it taken out. I had it removed.
Yeah, you had radical prostatectomy.
Robotic. Robotic. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I did too. I had mine 5.5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I have to get my blood tested every 3 months.
I asked my doctor about that. He said, you know what, there could have been a microscopic cell that got out that can wake up. So for me, it's every 6 months. You want
to know something? See, that is you're the first guy who's ever stated it that way, and I say it all the time. Cancer is microscopic. If one cell gets out, you have to keep an eye on it. And I've had 3 friends who came back after 10 years, 12 years, and 14 years, just by the way. And in each case, they had radiation and they're fine. And just because a cell gets out doesn't mean A, you're ever going to get it again. B, if you do, it could be so slow growing, it may never impact the rest of your life anyway. But here's the point. Don't be ignorant about this. Read up on it. Understand it. Talk to as many people as possible. Go online. Do your research. I did. By the time I was diagnosed with it, I had been studying it for 10 years.
Yep.
So I knew who the doctor was, where the operation was going to take place, procedure I was going to choose. I wouldn't let ignorance hit me. The atrial fibrillation was a complete out of weird thing because they pioneered a brand new operation at the time, which is 20 years ago. And the
Right.
first attempt to cure me with that operation was a total failure.
Mm.
And, when they took the catheters out of me, they punctured my heart muscle and 400
Oof.
cc's of blood entered my chest and collapsed my lung and put me in the ICU.
Oh, man.
And they didn't cure me. And 2 years later, I went to Cleveland Clinic where they do these things like a car wash. Like
Right.
that's just what they do.
Yep.
Thousands of them. Always find a guy that's done thousands.
Yeah.
Always find a surgeon, right?
Right.
Always find a surgeon
Experience.
done
Experience trumps
thousands.
everything.
Yeah, it's like a band, you know. How many shows you play? Well, you do a good show. Well, I've done 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad to know you're a survivor. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, so what do you got coming up? You've got the thing at the
We can
Long
talk about the
Island.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
Yeah. So
tomorrow,
I'm going to get this up. That's going to be on September 8th at 5 or so.
October.
October. Oh my God. Time is
Yeah.
going quick.
October
October.
8th. It's tomorrow. This is the 7th, right? So tomorrow, October 8th at 5 o'clock. They're going to be members for the first time ever. All the people like the guys from Stan Anderson and Good Rats and Zebra and Twisted Sister are all going to be there in the hall because the focus this year has been on the bar scene.
Yep.
On the club scene. So our backdrop is on the stage, our club backdrop, and giant. I've got like a 7-foot model of me and a 7-foot model of D and 7-foot model of Mendoza. And I'm going to be
Mendoza himself is 7 foot anyway. I met the
so
guy.
I'm going to be signing my book. So I'm doing a book signing and I'm doing a talk and a Q&A. And so if you come there to hear me talk about the club scene, you'll be able to ask questions. And for the first time, you'll have guys from Stan Anderson, Zebra, Good Rats, and us on stage together, which is really cool because we can talk. You know, if you said, hey, I saw you at Speaks, I remember this, I remember that. It's the first time you can ever talk to these guys and ask them questions because how many people saw us at these clubs? Hundreds.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I've just changed my plans. I'm gonna meet you in person because it really sounds really exciting.
And then I'm going to play some songs I did back in the club days, Lou Reed stuff. I'm going to sing, I think, 6 songs.
Nice.
You know, so that's going to be a fun thing to do. And we're going to meet the fans, and
Great.
and you know, and those are the people that kept us alive. The key here is that every band should be as lucky as we were to have fans like we had that kept us going all those years.
Yeah. Yep.
Because without them, we couldn't have sustained a career. And that's how important the club scene was. And in as much as we were a tri-state band and played Connecticut and we played Jersey, we're known as a Long Island band. Even though the band started in New Jersey, we are known as a Long Island band because we spent so many nights at the Mad Hatter in the Hamptons, so many nights at the OBIE, so many nights in Stony Brook, so many nights at the Hammerheads, all 3 Hammerheads. Most people don't even remember there were 3 of them.
Yeah, there's one in West Islip. Yeah, not far from me.
The big one was West Islip, but there was Hammerheads 1 in Levittown. Hammerheads 2 was the 1890s in Baldwin that was converted to Hammerheads 2 for a while.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You know, it was an incredible history. When I think back on some of the nights I would go home and go, how much longer is this going to go on? Like I would just, because the days go into weeks, goes into months, go into years. And it was constantly playing and playing and playing and playing and playing.
Nice. Well, I tell you, I'm really, I want to thank you so much, JJ. I wish you the best with the luck on the book. I'm going to buy the book. I want to brush up on that and help my own brand as I reinvented myself as a podcast host. And I wish you all the best with the guys tomorrow.
Just put the podcast really quick.
Oh,
podcast
please.
JJ French Connection Beyond the Music. It's on Spotify, Apple, and Podcast One, as well as other platforms. My book, Twisted Business, which is available on Amazon, like everything else is available on Amazon. And I do Cameo, which means you can order a salutation.
And it's also an audio book, too, I saw on Amazon.
And by the way, again, Twisted Sister's 40th anniversary of Under the Blade is coming out on vinyl. Vinyl is very big again, very hot.
Yeah.
And the second album is going to have us doing the bar stuff, which is, if you're a fan of the band doing Zeppelin and Aerosmith, for the first time you'll hear us doing Zeppelin and Aerosmith. And next May 10th is the 40th anniversary of We're Not Going to Take It, and I Want to Rock and Stay Hungry, And when people ask me, what is the high point of the band? Is it the 37 gold and platinum albums? Is it playing in front of 100,000 people? Like, what is the thing you take away the most? And I say, the thing I find the most interesting is that in 1987, Twisted Sister made Blackwell's worst dressed women's list. And he called us a car crash in a whorehouse. So thank you, Blackwell. I really appreciate that.
Well, JJ, it was really great talking to you. Thanks for being on the program, and I look forward to meeting you in person, brother. Thanks again.
You got it. See you tomorrow, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.